Hey, this is Brent.
Hey, this is Jordan.
What's up? This is Matt.
Hey, this is Sean.
And this is the Digital Ascent Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 0016. Today we're going to be doing some current events and then story time with Digital Ascent, where we cover, just some stories through our career that we hope that you guys enjoy or maybe find useful or, something like that. Of course, we'd love to hear from you guys and your stories. So, come check us out on Discord. Anyways, getting started with our current events. First thing I want to talk about is Baldur's Gate 3 smashes expectations. Wow. Some of the numbers that came out in the Community 23 update are really incredible. They're saying that during opening weekend, that there was 1,225 years worth of playtime, and that somehow in all that, only 368 people finished the game. I find that to be just absolutely amazing.
That's wild, actually.
That's wild.
I think I missed that part, actually, when I read that.
It's so crazy. They said that on Sunday, August 6th, that they accounted for 20% of all player time playing games, and it's now 7th on the chart of like top concurrent players. Yeah, I mean it ranks now with Elden Ring and that trash heap that was New World, and I can't talk about New World, not Third Shade. I hate that game so much. And in all seriousness, like it pumped out player numbers like you see for CS:GO. And that's amazing. CS:GO is number one played game in the world. Like even now, it's incredible stuff.
I just want to throw some love out for the game. Yeah, you guys definitely check out Baldur's Gate. And just tight. Mm-hmm. It's fire. I think we're all playing it here except for Sean. He's new.
Except for poor Sean. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm holding off. I'm working on my backlog, so I gotta be good about that. Consistency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's really good. So good luck with that, Sean. That consistency. I'm proud of you for sticking with it there. Next, I want to take a moment and plug the Pete and Pants merch shop. Our boy Brent Peden over here. Yeah, our boy Brent Peden over. Yeah, he's out here. He made himself a bunch of new merch. It looks
I'm so excited.
Fire. It's actually good. Yeah, it's actually good. We'll have the link in the show notes. We'll have the link in the Discord. It is worth mentioning one of the reasons we're talking about this, because all the new merch is AI generated images. And you know what? It looks good. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with what he's got together here. Brent, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you created these things? Like what type of AI tech you used?
Yeah, it's actually a bot called Midjourney. They do have I think there's a free tier that you can use. It's all powered, or it's all ran through through their Discord server. So you join their Discord, there's like a couple of free channels where you can put in prompts. So you essentially say like, imagine, and then something. And there's just a bunch of different parameters you can feed it. You can feed it certain styles. You could say, hey, imagine whatever. Imagine a cat, holding an umbrella, riding a bicycle, cartoon style, and you can tell it like the aspect ratio. And I don't know, you can give it like focal points and all sorts of cool stuff. And it'll render a quadrant. It renders 4 images in a quadrant, and then you can select in that quadrant. It'll have like buttons. It'll have like U1, U2, U3, U4, and you can select which one you want, or you can run the prompt again and get a whole other set with the same prompt, or you can tweak the prompt and all sorts of stuff. So I pay for the the basic tier, which is like $10 a month or something like that, where you can talk directly to the bot. That way, like, you're not like sharing prompts and images with everybody in the server sort of deal, and you get faster processing time and stuff like that. But it's a lot of fun to play with. I actually demoed this at my work as well. We actually had like what we call like a lunch and learn. We do lunch and learns every now and then, and we actually had an AI talk there. And at the end of it, just for fun, I pulled this up on the screen and we just had fun with it. I had people feeding me prompts, and we were doing all sorts of silly stuff. We had like a frog like smoking a cigar in like a business suit and all sorts of crazy mess. And it's just funny what it comes up with. And it's also funny the discrepancies sometimes. Like with humans, it does weird stuff. Like sometimes it'll have like extra fingers or like extra legs, extra limbs in general. All sorts of weird stuff. Eyes will be messed up sometimes. Like the mouth will be like misaligned. It's just really weird. And sometimes it's absolutely perfect. You'll see, and you know, speaking of like my merch, like a lot of what you will see in those designs has been tweaked, or I've ran it through parameters multiple times, or I've gone through. You can do like variations through the bot where you know, like I may have gotten one variation that I liked a lot, but then I told it, hey, I like this one, but do this to the same one. And then I ended up using like, you know, a result from something else. So it's a lot of playing with it, but you can get some really cool original stuff from it. You would hope original, you know, obviously that's still up for debate. Where is it getting all this stuff from? It's obviously pulling it from something, but, yeah, it's really cool. I highly recommend playing with it if you're into that sort of thing. Once again, the vast majority, like 90% of what you see on the site as of this moment, is AI generated. So it's pretty neat.
It's interesting that you are using a Discord bot, because I actually installed Stable Diffusion on my local machine, and it does phenomenal jobs, and you can do the exact same thing and have it locally installed. Now, you know, local installs, pulling it from GitHub, you know, security, right? But I don't have anything on this personal machine that I care about at all. So, you know, I'm sure Matt would be up in arms, but you know,
no, not necessarily. I don't freak out just because it's on, you know, open source or whatever, open source adjacent.
But I mean, so I've used it for my Pathfinder campaigns, and it's phenomenal. You can generate all kinds of cool stuff. But the prompt engineering, it can be really, really fantastic, or it can be absolutely terrible, and you come out with these wonky looking nightmare images. It's like 6 arms, and they're all, you know, disproportionate stuff. So it's cool to see you using it in a more I don't want to say business-like manner, but in a way that is unique to push branding, because I hadn't considered that. So that's pretty cool.
Man, it's just another example of how AIs help extend human capabilities. And I think that's one of like my big takeaways with AIs is that while they offer quite a bit of like doom and gloom available, it's undeniable that they also allow people to achieve things that they never could previously by themselves. It empowers the individual in some ways. Just
when you think about the art itself, so when I looked at your merch, I thought about the fact of, if I tried to do this myself, which by no means am I a digital artist, but that would take hours and hours of work, and you can do it with maybe a couple hours of prompt engineering and some samples.
Yep,
that's wild.
Exactly.
It is wild. It is pretty wild. I guess we'll move on to our next topic. Netflix has quietly released an app on iOS that is a game, like a gamepad. You know, it's got like A, B, X, Y, and a little thumbstick on there. They haven't really talked like a ton about what it's about. I basically assume it's going to be for video games. What it looks like. But it looks like it's interesting stuff, at least to me. Jordy, you got an opinion on this one, man?
I am actually a little bit this announcement is a little lost on me because I still don't understand what Netflix is trying to do in this space. I don't know if that makes sense. Is that too harsh?
Nah, man, I don't think they've really talked about it. I don't know what they're gonna do in this space either.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're doing.
They've had a presence, you know, they kind of just like suddenly announced they were doing like they were gonna do video games, and then there was like a presence at like last year's E3 or maybe it was like Summer's Game Fest or something like that. And I'm just like, oh, they're like, oh, we're opening a video game, like they have a publisher, and they're working with some like pretty heavy hitters in the industry right now, and I just don't. People want to play games on Netflix. Like, is that just something I don't understand? I don't. Like I don't get it. That's my opinion. I don't understand it.
They want to be GameFly.
Is it gonna be one controller per person? Are they going to use that model too? Like you have to biometrically put your thumbprint on it in order to use it?
Yes, that is actually how it's going to be. All right. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I thought it was worth mentioning, right? I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, what if they start dropping like little indie games? There's plenty of little indie games that you can play with the button combos I talked about. Good ones. And, you know, I'm trying to think of it. Ruiner, I think, might work with that button combo. That game was amazing. That'd be a lot of fun. Just to, like pop on a TV sometimes. I don't know. Food for thought.
I like the optimistic outlook, Matt. You're keeping this relevant for the people.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, maybe we'll get some good stuff on there. I mean, maybe they'll do absolutely nothing with it, right? I mean,
I hope that's not where they're going.
I mean,
yeah, John, it can't be as obvious as it looks.
I don't know.
I think it's less for us though, and it's more for the folks that don't have all the awesome tech that we have. It's the folks that they have Netflix and that's it. And yeah, they like games, but they're not going to go out of their way to game. But all of a sudden, Netflix has games, and for an extra however much a month, they can play games now, or maybe they're already paying the whatever the max package is with Netflix, and they just maybe they add it. Maybe they add games to that one. I don't know. Maybe Netflix is generous in that way. I doubt it, but and now hey, I'm going to go download this Gamepad app, and now I can I can play these. Maybe they do kind of the Apple Arcade model where you get access to X amount of games as part of the subscription, and boom, there you go. I mean, that's kind of neat. You've already got the hardware. You've got a phone that can be a gamepad. You don't have to do really anything extra.
All right.
You've already got it.
I see it.
It's kind of neat,
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of neat. I don't think it's for us though.
Yeah.
Not for us. You're right. It's not. It's just not for us, and that's probably why I'm confused. Yeah.
Right.
Appreciate you, Brent. Thanks for.
They think there's some sort of market for it.
Yeah, so
I mean,
somebody out there, yeah, they think there's a market for it. They've invested money. Apps don't grow on trees, right? So
you know what it could be. Last thought on it is, Phil Spencer mentioned at this the FTC thing a couple of weeks ago, video game market data, wherever they're getting that from, is that like the next. Console hardware ain't going to be a thing generations here, and that's what they both like. I don't want to say both, but that was Xbox's big pillar at this hearing thing. And so Phil Spencer was saying that like all of the data is telling them that the mobile space is what's next. And I mean, look, Sean just picked up a Steam Deck. I picked up a handheld a couple weeks ago. Those are what's hot right now. They got new ones coming out every other week. So when you think about Netflix, the platform, it's if they can bring video games to it, now they're bringing more engagement I mean, they already have the install base. You know what I mean? So it's a very maybe like video game Netflix is what takes over the next 10 to 20 years, and like the movie streaming portion of it is the smaller part. I don't know. Just wanted to throw that out there. It's a very interesting, thing to think about when you think about the words that Mr. Phil Spencer was given, and that mobile gaming is the future. So, food for thought. Just throwing that out there.
That's true. I hate that. I hate that idea, and I love that idea because I'm a big I like to have the power right here in my PC case. I like to have that native. Like I like to have my graphics card right here, my CPU right here, but at the same time, you've got NVIDIA, you got AMD, you got all these guys like every year jacking the prices higher and higher, and you get less and less. And now, like, I haven't tried it yet. I'd love to like do the trial or whatever they got these days. Like the GeForce now has like, what is it, 240 hertz streaming or something like that.
Yeah, if you pay,
it's pretty slick, man. If you have the bandwidth for it,
I think they have
it's
you got to have the bandwidth for it. But it's like if we're getting to that point, internet connections and fiber and connectivity is getting better and better and better and better. If we envision a world. Well, not for Sean, but everybody else, it's getting better and better and better. And imagine a world anyways, where everyone has access to, let's say, baseline X amount of connectivity that's required for this thing to be possible. It's like, okay, is that where we're going? Like, we're just, we're no longer going to have the hardware in our house. We're just going to be talking to a machine in the cloud from here on out. That's it. Like, no more gaming computer, no more console, no more, set-top box. We just have a small little thin client. That's it.
Yes.
I mean, dang.
From a marketing standpoint, it makes the most sense. So when you buy static hardware, and this goes for businesses too, right? If you buy static hardware, then there's a 5 to 7 year life cycle process that happens. Yep. And so they're not paying money for that amount of time. Or you can shift the hardware to their hosted platform, and now you're paying on a monthly recurring basis, or however much, at the most yearly, right? Maybe more, but typically it's year, and you can discount it however much you want. But I mean, still, that model makes more sense to me, just from a business standpoint, and that's why you're seeing SaaS so much.
I get that. I say yes and no on that though, because like there's people that are double dipping on that one too, though, because you've got, Xbox, for instance, or Microsoft. You got PC Game Pass. I've got this badass PC, and now I'm also paying for PC Game Pass or Ultimate Game Pass on top of it. So like, not only did I buy the hardware, but now I'm paying monthly to access a library of games. Or
dude, it's terrible. Yeah.
So like, you know what I mean? So like in a lot of cases, not only are we also investing in the hardware on the Microsoft side, we're also paying for Xbox Live. On PlayStation side, we're also paying for PlayStation Online. On the Nintendo side, we're also paying for Nintendo Online to get like the full access to the capabilities. So, I mean, we're investing in the hardware, but they're double dipping on us by making us also have a subscription to a lot of these things. So like they're already doing this to us. I feel like they're already getting us.
Yeah, but I mean, why not just do it all? Just have the whole gambit, as in like you have to pay to have the streaming service. You have to pay to play the games. And now it's a forever subscription. Like it's just always there. That's what you have to do. There is no hardware anymore, and you can still
I get it. I mean, it probably is a lot more normalized in terms of they just it's like being salaried. It's like, well, I can count on this because they will always have to pay me this. It's not a question of whether it's coming or not. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I get it.
All right, so I wasn't planning on doing a debate here about this, but I'm gonna get down on it. I got things to say now about all this stuff.
Let's hear it.
I think, I got opinions, and I don't think it aligns. So I have a pretty decent end gaming PC, right? CPU's getting a little long in the tooth, but it's got 3090 in there, so it's got a big boy graphics card, and I personally see the writing on the wall that there's a decent chance like I'm not going to be buying graphics cards in a few years because it's so expensive. I mean, this PC is like, that graphics card was enormously expensive, and sure, I get my 144, and that's fantastic, and I get not my 4K at 144, but I can get my 4K too, some if I want some of that, but I mean, how many months can I pay $15 a month before it costs me a gaming computer, right? And the math, like it just like the math is so far beyond like I could do it for like a few years. And even then, at the end of that, I would have to be buying a new gaming computer again. And so I personally I like having my hardware near like right next to me. I don't like I have mostly stable internet, but it's not good enough that I would like it's not fiber, and I'm never going to get fiber in this house. Like I've talked to some senior AT&T people that live in the neighborhood, and they've told me that there is rock here and that we are lucky to have cable basically, and that we're never getting fiber. So like do I want to bet all of my gaming personally on the remote? No, not really. But you know, from an economic point of view, it's pretty hard to justify the gaming computer. GeForce Now works pretty good, and Game Pass Ultimate and the streaming available. I mean, like once again at $15 a month, I mean you're gonna get like first day access to Starfield. I mean that's pretty good. So this is one situation where I'm kind of glad to see software and infrastructure as a service be available. And I think what we're seeing now is the beginning of the transition from like on-premise servers to off-premise servers. And sure, some people do the on-prem thing, but in like 20 years, it'll be kind of a niche thing, I think. Game consoles are basically dead, in my opinion. We'll have gaming consoles. They'll just be, little internet boxes, though.
Yeah, I think they're on their way. But this also leads. I always get worried. Look, I'm a nerd. All right, one of my big conspiracy fears is like some real Blade Runner stuff where we're gonna have an internet blackout or like some bandwidth wars or something. And
no more gaming,
streaming and stuff is great. I love the SaaS offerings. That's awesome. But how? Does that make sense? I'm not even gonna go down the route.
Yeah.
I just want to throw that out there of like, it's going to be useful until, people they can't work because everybody's gaming or streaming.
Social credit score too low. Sorry. Gonna cut you off.
Yeah.
Gotta get back to work.
No, you're good.
I'm not saying there's not problems with it, but from an economic feasibility as a consumer, like it's going to be harder, guys, to continue justifying the purchase of your next Bangarang computer.
I heard. Yep.
Because they're basically going to be Chrome boxes, right? As in you open them and then you open up Chrome, and then that's how you get to Word and Excel and email and Steam and everything else. Just my 2 cents. So I guess with that, folks, unless anyone else has anything to say. No. All right.
Nope.
We're gonna move on to story time with Digital Ascent. What we're thinking here, folks, for those of you that are listening, we're just gonna like go over some stories that we've had. Hopefully, some of these things provide some sort of like educational value or something useful, and maybe they'll be amusing. We'll just see how it goes. So I guess I'll go ahead and kick it off with a tale of 2 business email compromises. These are real stories. Obviously, I'm not going to go into like where I encountered them or whatever, but I will talk about what occurred. So the first one is I get a call on Sunday night, and basically alarms are going off, and somebody has the rule in there that has been applied to their inbox that says, please delete all new mail messages. And for those of you that aren't in security, that's a big red flag, right? Because who wants to delete 100% of all email messages that come in or out of an inbox, right? It defeats the point of email. I go through the normal checks, and we find that this lady has clicked on a phishing email. She proceeded to deliver credentials and MFA, leading to an immediate compromise of email account. Yep, got him. So obviously, what are some of the takeaways here? I think the most important takeaway is that MFA won't always save you. And it's not good enough just to apply the second factor of authentication. You also have to be watching for things that are abnormal. Though in this lady's defense, she got the email compromise. The compromised email that hit her came from somebody that she knew at a like that like emails her normally as part of business operations. And I'm going to circle back to that tidbit later. The second one of these stories is basically same basic thing. A bunch of people got hit with emails. Few people clicked on them, delivered up credentials. No MFA compromise this time, surprisingly enough. And we're able to move on with our days. So I do. The reason why I wanted to share both these stories is because it's important to recognize that MFA will stop a lot of attacks, but it won't stop all of them. And the really the most important thing that you could probably do is other than like enacting MFA, is educating your users into or thinking about yourself, looking for suspicious things, even these emails. The basically the way that you could tell that they were problematic is by looking at the domains. As you hovered over them, it's hard to do that though, right? When you're going through your busy days or whatever, but you need to try to do it anyways, right? So I would say best thing that you can do when you're facing these types of attacks, and you want to protect yourself, is to make sure you apply MFA. And second is, to try to give that common sense style education, about like what to look for. The other thing I want to talk about is kind of like the incident response and how you recover from one of these things, right? Because now you have a compromised account, and you got to think, how do you ensure that there aren't more compromised accounts? How do you ensure that that you are aware of all of the entities or components of it that have been compromised, and so on and so forth? And so what I did next, and what I would encourage people to do if you find yourself in these situations, is start trying to figure out where do you think the malicious logins came from, and what did those malicious logins potentially touch? You should be able to track a lot of these things by IP addresses, and of course, you should be kicking them out of you should be like revoking MFA stuff and MFA sessions, and then forcing re-registration of MFA and changing passwords and so on and so forth. And at the end of it, hopefully you can come away with the conclusion that all they did was something like the click delete, delete all inbound, outbound emails thing. The other takeaway that I hope that, or I guess the other thing I hope that you would take away from these couple of stories, is that just because an email box gets compromised or an account gets compromised, it doesn't mean that the crown jewels have been stolen. There are a lot more steps that need to occur. They need to do things like set the email box to delete all emails, because they need to escalate privileges. So they need to start moving people higher up the chain, or they need to get into like different portions of the account, right? I don't know. Just food for thought.
Matt, if I may, I have a couple things to add there.
Good. Yeah, man. I was hoping somebody else would just naturally jump in. What you got, brother?
Yeah. So when it comes to breaches like that, it does make sense to have secondary, tertiary, quaternary, I mean, as many layers as you can to alert and analyze excuse me, the data that's there for the breach. So and I think you nailed it perfectly with the end user training, because fallible humans will click on multiple different things. It can be coming from a legitimate source and still be malicious.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a lot of the big things that companies don't understand is that if you don't have the alerting in place and you don't have the analytics in place, you can't sufficiently track what all happened
Yep.
because while yes, the email was compromised, it also links to SharePoint, to OneDrive, to the ability to exfiltrate data. So it's not just the email that you need to be looking at. You need to be looking at all the surrounding factors and touch points that are
Yep.
connected to it. So if you don't have those tools, and Microsoft Defender has been really, really great. I have used it a couple times now for some breaches that I've encountered, and it shows you, like you said, IP address. Where's the IP address coming from? When did they access it? How did they bypass the security systems? What data was touched and or moved within the time period of the breach? Has there been things moved out, files deleted, files copied, or shared links? So going through and doing message traces on, if it's a consistent email that's been sent out to multiple users. I've had one where 4 people got hit with the same one and they all clicked on it. So
Yep.
there's a whole gambit of things you can do, but my biggest point here is it's very much worthwhile to have the tools in place so that you can properly analyze the breaches to know the extent. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, I think that you bring up a really important point, and it's part of the reason that I think it was last month we talked about the Microsoft keys theft, right? And
yes, sir.
Then, yep, and good job, Microsoft. And the one of the outcomes of that is that CISA basically was like, "Hey, man, you got your keys stolen, and people don't know what type of damage was done because you aren't releasing the logs, and that's morally wrong. You should really release the logs." And eventually Microsoft agreed that they would start releasing that logging for everybody. And that's exactly what Sean is talking about, is that it's so important understanding what got touched. In the medical industry, if, more than 10 records get touched, you have to disclose that to every person. And I think that you have to put out a news broadcast of some sort or another. And wouldn't it be really helpful if you could tell which 10 of those emails got touched? I mean, it's a really serious problem.
Where is it going? Where did it come from? How do I stop it from going further? I mean, you can blacklist IPs and say, this source never, ever again. This domain, never, ever again.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. One thing I do want to kind of talk about before moving on to somebody else's story is that in both of these cases, the emails came from a known good source. In fact, I think every actual near compromise I've ever worked perhaps has come from somebody that they have previously emailed. Somebody else's email got compromised. They often do not have MFA when I'm calling them going, "Hey, I heard you guys were sending me compromised emails. Would you please stop doing that?" Which is always a fun conversation to have. I find often they do not have MFA. And I guess this is where, that terminology breaches beget breaches kind of comes from, right? So you get breached and then they use your legitimate quote unquote credentials to breach me. Thanks, sucker. And then you use my legitimate credentials to breach somebody else. Ooh, sorry about that, folks.
I've had a couple that were illegitimate sources, but it's that character shifting. It's the email, but one letter off type situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it can come from anywhere. I guess that's the point.
Yep. Gotta be suspicious. Well, folks, I can do another one of my other stories, or we can have somebody else jump in. What do you guys want to do? Anyone want to jump in?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll jump in since I've been running my mouth. So this is more of a generic troubleshooting one, less security side, but we had a lightning strike hit a building, and it was pretty gnarly. and the client was down for multiple days. And the methodology, I think, is important. So we get a bunch of alerts, and desk starts working it, right? They go through the ISP. ISP says, node's down. We'll let you know when it's back up. All right, cool. Get the notification. They go, yeah, node's back up, and we can talk to your gateway. Client's still down. Okay, well, here we go. So now we go, can I ping the gateway? Yes. All right, well, gateway's good. Can I get to the firewall? Yes. I can log in through the WAN interface. Awesome. I get in and start poking around, and first thing I notice, interfaces, LAN, or local area network. So WAN is wide area network, LAN is local. So WAN is outside world, LAN is inside your network. Just trying to keep acronyms kosher here. LAN is down, so something's going on. First thought, switch. Grab the switch IP, try to ping it. No dice. Firewall says, can't talk to it. Okay, so now I call the client. Client says, oh, well, let me go check the network closet. Go look at the switch. Solid green lights. I go, uh-oh, okay. So first things first, I tried to do all within my power to get connected to it. No console cable, so I can't do it locally. And resource there probably wouldn't be able to walk through it. So end up just after futility of troubleshooting, reboot. Comes back up, same green lights. So call Dell, check the warranty. It's under warranty. Awesome. To prove it, I need a console cable. So now we have to send somebody on site because, well, that's just what's got to happen. But we ended up putting in a temporary switch to get them back online, and then we're going to RMA the switch. But I think the reason I wanted to bring this up is it even though it's networking specific, the troubleshooting methodology is really important. It's you start from one end and you work your way down. And that goes for pretty much everything in IT. Go from the source, confirm your data. And Matt, you taught me this. Can I ping it? Can I trace route? Is it DNS? Like, what are all the basic things that I can eliminate from I don't have to think about this anymore. I know it's like not applicable. And from there, you work your way down or up, however you want to work the model. But it's really important that you don't overanalyze things and go, well, maybe it's the servers, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. It's, work with the data that you got. And even in stressful situations, because the client's down, like it's not like I'm sitting here twiddling my thumbs. I'm actively engaged with the problem, but working that through will help you tremendously in your career, and being able to consistently apply that methodology will skyrocket your success, in my opinion. So I thought that was a pretty valuable lesson for some of our more junior members that may be listening.
Man, I really agree with that. That maybe it's because I helped teach some of that, or instill some of those values.
Those times you helped me with all the outages, and you're like, no, idiot, I need pings. You haven't trace routed anything. You just go back and do this and come back when you have more data.
Man, I feel like networking, I loved working networking, and I loved working on, I always felt like I was working on like roads, basically. That's how I always try to talk about networks. I try to talk about it like they're roads.
I always use plumbing, but
plumbing's a better analogy. I don't want to talk about plumbing. I've been working on home plumbing now for weeks on and off. It's like, I think I finally got it. I think I finally got it today. I think all my plumbing woes are just about over. So I don't really want to talk about plumbing though. So I'm going to use streets, and it's so important to ensure that every street links up to the next one. Right. Going down the road's all good and dandy until, there's, I don't know, the freeway's been disconnected or something. I don't know, but that's how I always kind of envisioned it. So that's a good story, Sean. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the little tidbit there at the end. Also, that it's important to be just troubleshooting those problems link by link, basically.
Yeah, it really is important, and I've had multiple senior engineers pound this into my brain over my tenure. Brent's done it. You've done it. Where I work now, there's plenty of people that have been like, no. You're making a bunch of assumptions. Work with the data. And it's hard to do because you're kind of in pseudo panic mode. Because, when P1s come through, right? Like priority ones, somebody's down, people lose money. They can't work. And when you're the guy, the hot seat's rough. But being able to push that down long enough to really engage with it and work it through is somewhat of a learned art, but it's doable.
Yeah.
I
got a couple that kind of tie into the whole philosophy of just pumping your brakes a little bit. If you want me to go ahead and share a few.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Lay it on me.
Let's do it.
So I got one that ties back into the AI a little bit, since ChatGPT and stuff has become so popular. As everybody knows, we've discussed it a few times, where ChatGPT can engineer scripts and whatnot. And I actually had I was working with somebody not too long ago that had ChatGPT write a script that it seemingly looked pretty good from their point of view, and they ended up running it against the print server. And the intention of this script was to simply essentially replace the paths of the printer shares on the print server for that was essentially being shared down to all the workstations. Well, instead of it replacing the printer paths, it deleted all the printer shares from the print server, because there was essentially there was one parameter off. Like ChatGPT was convinced that this one parameter was needed for X, Y, and Z, and it actually wasn't. It was like in the latest PowerShell model that was deprecated, that was no longer used, so it was ignored in the latest PowerShell model, and that's not something that ChatGPT understood. It wanted to argue against that. It's like, no, this has to be used, and so they ran the script and it deleted all that. And that all that goes to say is that's just a really quick one, and this ties into the next one as well. But that's kind of pump your brakes. Don't trust. This goes to this goes for stuff that you just find on the internet in general. You shouldn't just be copy and pasting code from the internet, whether that's from ChatGPT or from Stack Exchange or from any of these sites. You need to look at it. You need to make sure you understand what it's doing line for line before you go executing it on a client's environment. Keep that in mind. Same goes for, I had an engineer that, this one's a little bit different, but this also kind of goes to show that vendor support is not always the best, and they don't quite understand what you're asking them sometimes. I had an engineer that was working with Microsoft support on something, and they said, hey, you need to go check this singular box on an Office 365 tenant, and this will fix a problem that this singular user is having. Singular
Famous
user.
Last words.
Right? So one user's having a problem.
Singular user. All right. Cool.
Right, bro. Here, upload just flip over the domain, man. No problem.
Right. So one user's having a problem. Here's this checkbox on the tenant. You need to go check that, okay? And the engineer's like, all right, dog, I'm gonna go do that. So hits the checkbox.
It doesn't ask.
Hits the checkbox.
So I've seen it done. It's hilarious. It's
and
dumb.
hits save.
Don't do it.
And then all of a sudden, we're getting phone calls on, I can't access my email. And yes, so it was because of the configuration that client had. This configuration. So I'm not going to get into specifics. Hell, I don't even remember half the specifics. It's been a while, but it was something to do with authentication to 365 and whatnot, and the way we had them set up at the time was, I think, legacy or whatever. But all that to say, you can't. one, this is kind of a two-parter as well. You can't just go making global changes for the sake of one user anyways. You shouldn't be doing that on any system. You kind of have to, you always have to take a step back and assess the situation of like, okay, cool, this fixes this one person, but for this other 600 users, is this going to have any effect on them? Is this going to hurt them in any way? Is this going to affect, their ability to do work, their ability to access the system, whatever? But also in this case too, this as a company at the time, this made us learn, who do we give global admin to on the 365 side? So also from the business level, if you're running a business, if you're a manager within a business that, kind of does managed service provider sort of work, or your internal IT or whatever, what type of delegated admin access you're doing? Are you giving global admin to everybody? Think about who has admin and what they're capable of doing, because that singular checkbox that could really ruin people's days.
Seriously.
Right. Like, yeah, that green guy that you just gave that power to, and you got the Microsoft guy telling him, yeah, man, go check this box. It'll fix this one person's problems. He's not going to understand that it's getting ready to take down the entire business potentially.
Context.
Context. Thankfully, that particular situation, like, we caught it early enough to where we were able to go uncheck the box and hit save again, and it stopped propagating. And so like it only it halfway applied in our situation. So like we didn't have a full on meltdown, but it was close. But all that to say, like, you really got to pump the brakes and kind of pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah, it couldn't agree more. But you implied reasoning of thought that may not be super apparent. But when you go to make big changes, you must be considering your rollback plan. What does it look like if this goes wrong? And a lot of people don't do that.
I got a story for this. I got a great story.
I cut off Brent, so I don't. If you have more to say, please do. But it immediately popped in my brain when you were talking about we were able to roll it back quickly, because we caught it, like we knew how to catch it. And that's where you have your senior engineers, right, that can quickly troubleshoot those things. But as the person working the issue, always be thinking about, if this doesn't work, how do I go back to when it was working?
Right. And no, you're fine. I was done with those two trains of thoughts.
Do you have more? I feel like I just completely cut you off, but
no. That was kind of my rant with that, the whole pumping the brakes and whatnot. So Matt, if you have something to tie into that, by all means.
Oh yeah, I got a great story about knowing your rollback plans and what happens if you don't. So me and another senior engineer are standing in this networking closet, and we're working on untangling what has been over complications with more over complications done to the engineering. And we think that we have it all untangled. The problem is there's this one router that we don't have a password to. We're pretty sure it's the MPLS router, which is just a way to say it's a router that connects us to other places. And we're pretty sure that that's what it is. We can't get in there. I'm going, maybe we should do something about that and try to get in there. We're pretty sure that this MPLS has been turned off and this router just doesn't need to be here, but we're not 100% confident. There's only 4 cables. And the other engineer goes, no problem, man. We'll just get rid of it. We don't need it. And as I'm sitting there going, we should probably investigate this further, he leans down and pops out all 4 of those blue colors into that cable.
Yeah, let's go, dude. Bullshit. Absolutely.
For those who are uninitiated, these cables all look exactly the same. They come from the ceiling, basically, and there is nothing to tell them apart at this point. They're just dangling from the ceiling. And we're sitting there going, okay, well, let's see if that did anything. And I think I noticed right then the pings drop on my computer, and that pings are a way for me to test and make sure I can reach the internet. So I kind of go, oh crap. Well, I guess we have a problem there. And then not a minute later, we're standing there looking at this problem, trying to think about what's the best way to do it. Do we just start plugging in the cables until the internet comes on? There's only so many combinations it can be.
Oh,
and
God.
because I was in a position where we were sharing the building with a client, we hear a beep beep on the server room door, and 3 of our junior engineers come in and are like, hey, the client says the internet is down. And me, the other engineer, just look at them. We're like, oh, you really?
How is that
I didn't
possible?
know that. I'm gonna get right on that. At which point we did start just plugging in those cables, and that's what we got to do for the next 45 minutes. We got to mark the cables and then keep track of what holes we plugged them in, and we got to play that game Mastermind, basically, only with zero feedback other than, yo dog, you still don't have internet, and the client is still an angry client. And like, man, I love that story. I think that's probably one of the funniest stories because I just sat there and watched it. What'd you say?
Did you at least know which 4 ports you were trying to plug it into, or
no?
Oh,
thank goodness there were only 4 ports on the machine.
Okay,
on the router.
Okay.
So
I
have
4 or 48.
No, thank gosh. No, man. It was 4 cables, 4 ports. And so, like I said, there's really only so many combinations it can be. But, when you're standing there with an angry client, just like, oh, I'm angry, you took my internet, idiot. Man. Yeah, I don't know, man. I wish I had somebody to come talk down the client on my behalf or something. That wasn't really a good time. I don't know.
Yeah, I bet not.
You know what? Hey, this is a perfect segue. I'm just gonna hop in here because you know what? If you need somebody to ever talk down a client, I'm your guy. You know what? Let me give you guys a couple of situations here on the non-technical side of things that I still think are beneficial because at the end of the day, we're all still in the service industry. I've had conversations as recent as this week of like, hey, here's some soft skills train up to help, a technical resource not feel terrible, like when they're, in a potential CSAT situation with a client. CSAT for the uninitiated just being customer satisfaction. We normally, at least at my organization, can attribute that to like a negative, something bad. Has somebody complained or had a concern, and so there's going to be action on our side for that. So whether you're at the management level, you're at the tech source level, I don't think there is one scenario that I'll pick from here, and I'll make this brief. But I think it is just very funny to me how I just think this is really simple, and I'd be interested to hear actually how you guys approach upset clients or angry clients, or how you kind of soothe those situations where you can feel one is brewing. It may be your fault, but you are now the receiver of it. And so maybe we can loop back to you guys, and I'd love to see if you guys agree or disagree. I think my biggest piece here is to literally just fall on your sword. If a client tells you right over the phone, by the time I'm getting a client, it's been through a couple of people. Right? Or if I'm talking to a user, it's been through the technical resource that worked it. In some cases, it may have been, 2 or 3 technical resources if there was an escalation. In a lot of cases, my coordinator is, the user or having some line of interaction with, the client before it gets to me. And so on average, we're probably sitting at, the client has gone through 2 or 3 people before they're getting to me for different reasons, right? For every situation. By the time they get to me, and I open up the phone with, hey, I open up the call with, hey, this is, Jordan. I'm a service desk manager for X company. Having a good time. Why don't you tell me about it, right? The client opens up, oh, thank God, I got a manager, right? We've all been in this situation. We've all scenario. I'm pissed off with customer service. I finally got the manager, and I'm about to let all hell loose, right? And truthfully, it's never that bad, but there's always some frustration, and it's clear that the user's having a good time. The user tells me, "Hey, problem is X. This engineer is an idiot. I worked with X, Y, and Z, and they're not, far off from what I've heard before on complaints or calls like this. People are just being really abrasive. I don't take it personally, number one, because I understand that the client's issue is not with me. And so I'm lying here. This is probably big point number two. Understand with your whole heart, the user's issue is not with you. Or maybe very rarely, I'll say. Some cases where maybe you're just not good socially and you are the problem, but we'll just assume that here you're not. And I think you always have to have that in the back of your mind, because if you don't, then you're liable to make some really decisions, or maybe feel like you're being backed into a corner to where you have to tell the client things that they want to hear that you can't deliver, I had a guy earlier this week who was working with a and told them, they couldn't get it solved right there. He told them we'd reach out to him, 6 a.m. the next morning, because that's when the guy would be available. We're not open at 6 a.m. You know what I mean? Like, so that's point number one, is that, the user is probably not upset with you. They're upset that their stuff is broken. And you are you're the holder of the keys to the kingdom. They're talking to the people they think can get it solved. And when obstacles are now path, that I think presents the user with a little bit of confusion, a little bit of frustration of like, hey, why am I wasting my time on the call with you? Right. So that's big number one. User doesn't have an issue with you. Right. Back to the fall on your sword point. If you do get to that point where you're handling complaints, whether you're the middleman or the manager, just fall on your sword. Just take the side of the client. You know what I mean? Very tactfully, very professionally. There are ways to take the side of a client who is, I don't want to say like berating. You don't want to take the side of somebody who's berating your employees, right? But, Matt, pretend you're an irate client. Tell me, I just gave you service. One of the guys on my team just gave you service. We'll pretend it's Sean. Sean did a really bad job, and now you're upset about it, and you got to give me
Jordy,
a call. Can you just...
Yeah, sure.
What's your issue?
Bring, sucker.
Hello?
Bring.
Hello? The financer. I said hello twice. User, how are you?
I can't hear you over the rage of the blood pumping in my ears, and I'm just so angry. I talked with one of your guys. I think his name was Pond or something. I couldn't. I'll be honest, I wasn't really paying that much attention. That's not what's important. What's important is that I've typed in my password, and now I can't remember it anymore again. And it's the 5th time this has happened, and I don't understand why I keep forgetting my password, but it's definitely Pons or Krons or whatever his name's fault is. I'm very angry.
You know what, Matt? I really appreciate you, number one, giving me a call. I can totally understand your frustration. Yes. And if I'm being quiet, I would also be a little irate if this is the 5th, 6th time that I'm having to call in.
Oh, thank
and I'm still dealing with the same issues. What I'll actually do here is I'll get you on the line with another resource here, another engineer, and I'll place you on a brief hold, and I'll give them a little update on what the situation is. Maybe we can give you a suggestion for a couple of managers, and I can have one of my engineers get you set up with that application, and that would definitely help resolve the issue of I'm going to call in for password help. Is that something you might be interested in?
Oh, thank you very much. I'm significantly less irate now that you have taken my side and told me that you care.
Hey, not a problem, Big Matt.
All jokes aside, Jordy's right, man. This is what I do. When you call in your angry customer, I just like, man, that definitely sounds like a reason why I'd be pissed. I also would be mad if I had issues remembering my password. Like, so I say that, I did that and it was all kind of a joke, but that's a real problem. Passwords are hard to remember, right?
That's like, literally, I just want to
actually want to be demeaning to people who are struggling with that. That's actually a hard problem. And that's a problem that people face day to day. And it's not because you're stupid. It's because people haven't taught you good passphrase techniques to help you remember your passwords. Just my two.
Yeah, and I just want to throw it out there, man. It is funny, like we present it that way, but I've had conversations that have literally worked just like that. And the password thing is interchangeable, right? It could be phones, it could be email. I've had people get really upset about like going out of office messages when those aren't turned off at the right time. Really simple things. It could be anything.
Yep.
But the point here, the very key thing here is that the client, again, they're or assume that rule number one is true, where the issue is not with you, it's with the problem not being solved. If you can sit there and win the client's trust by expressing to them like, hey, I totally understand your frustration. I work in IT. These are problems that I deal with too. You validate them, you affirm them, and now guess what? You've taken a loss in the client's eyes, experience, and turn that around, because now they have, and we all know what this feeling is, right? You're sitting on customer service or on the line. You've probably sat there for 1 to 2 hours, right? At least I've been in a number of these. I'm going to assume that you guys working in the technical field in IT have also dealt with this, both as a consumer and as a professional. You're sitting there and you've gone through, X amount of people, and it's like, man, I'm going to be here all damn day. Am I ever going to get somebody? And the one time that next person, the golden voice of the gods above that have decided to grant you with the actual competent technical help, it's like a wave of relief washes over you, right? And suddenly all of the things that made you upset aren't really relevant anymore, because you finally got that person, right? And so I try to think of it like that. The client, they don't have a problem, so I'm going to provide the best customer experience that I can, try to win this person over, and show them at the end of the day that like, hey, this is good services, right? And I think point number 3 is, if you are in the position to receive complaints or you're receiving a CSAT, or maybe the client just loses their stuff on you. It's important, if you are following this rule or trying to take the side of the client, don't throw yourself or the guys on your team or your organization. I've had guys before take concerns from clients, and the client says, person did this, and now the client and this resource are going back and forth about how that guy made a mistake. You know what I mean? Like, really throwing this guy under the bus, which I guess, and all things considered, that's kind of what we're talking about here. But the problem is, now that user calls back, happens to get this engineer, there's going to be an immediate problem, right? The user's not going to trust this guy. People talk, users talk, we know that, right? So now it becomes a much bigger problem for both organizations, and it's fun. So as tactfully and as clean as you can, take the user side. We've talked for a really long time now. I hope that
I have a follow-up point, Jordy, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely. The more the merrier.
Yeah. So from a technical resource side, I'd be interested to, I don't want to say role play, but consider the tact you would use on the receiving end as a technical resource. Let's say either escalation or transfer a problem to you. Does that make sense?
Sure. Absolutely, it does. Go ahead.
My thought would be, so let's say, we just got this call from Matt, who is incredibly irate. Jordy comes to me. Yeah, he's already teed off, right? to just drive it straight into your mouth and be like, hey, I'm done. Like, this is it. I'm done.
My day's been bad. You're my punching bag.
Yeah, you're my punching bag now. Jordy comes to me. He says, I'm going to insert words here, but this is typically how it's worked in the past. Hey, Sean, I've got this user. I need them handled immediately. They've had some bad experience. Here's the ticket or the information that you need on the historical data of what has gone wrong, and I need you to take this call right now. So as a technical resource, first off, make sure you actually read the notes.
Now,
yes, bingo. Oh my goodness.
That's providing the notes are good, right?
Man.
I'll grant you that. But if you ask dumb questions to an already hot client,
I will get even angrier now.
In a good position. I'll just tell
Sean,
you it doesn't end well.
I think that's a great point. I just want to highlight like I am a firm believer of there are no such thing as dumb questions, but in the service industry, if you are talking to a user, that rule, you throw that in the garbage. There is a such thing as a dumb question when you are pointing those at the user. And so you just have to be really careful about what you're asking. And if that is something that has clearly been stated, listen, by the time I'm bringing Sean into a problem, we're at that breaking point. You know what I mean? Sean is not a resource that I can easily tap in, and that has been true for a very long time. And so by the time I'm bringing Sean in, and I'm glad the question, I think point number 4 that I'll just throw out here is if you are the receiver, if you are the Sean at your organization, and receiving these things, Sean hit the nail right on the head. Point number 1 should be to review that ticket like the back of your hand, right? And as you you're ready to, transfer or begin, communication with the client, you're in all business. We're not sitting here ready to, shoot the shit with the user or the client, because it is assumed by this point they have already talked to multiple resources. To a coordinator, most likely. They've talked to a manager. And in some cases, depending on how the concern was delivered, they could be downwards, right? They could be talking to organization leadership, right? Depending on how bad the idea or what level of user this is. I think it's always safer, and this is the same thing that I'm doing as I'm receiving a call. I'm trying to gauge how warm is the user, right? Now, everybody in this, in our little call right now is doing the same thing. How warm is the user? What is my left and right limit? What with here socially? And sometimes you can't get away with anything, and you have to be in and out, moving as quickly and as efficiently as you can. Maybe these are the users where it's like, okay, cool. I've read the notes. I've gotten to talk to the user. The user knows an escalated resource is involved. User, I'll give you a call back when I've got more to report, right? And maybe that's the case. Maybe the user wants to be on the line with you, and it's just going to be a silent, awkward call. Just get uncomfortable like being uncomfortable.
Hey,
absolutely
I've been that user before. Sometimes,
yeah.
Like sometimes I've been that guy where I've been like, "Hey, your support's been really bad," and basically, I don't think I'm going to get a call back. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wait while you work the problem in like real time. So
bingo.
I'll sit here. I'm just going to, browse Reddit, work other problems. You just let me know when there's something for me to know. No problem.
Absolutely, man. And we've also had situations where, and I think that's relevant because we've had, a similar concern in the last couple of months where user was upset through the escalation that we just, discussed or worked through. And, the resource was trying to be chipper and friendly, with the client. In my opinion, doing anything wrong or unprofessional, but the user received it as unprofessional, right? Because the user is upset. I'm upset. I think this is urgent. And your tone doesn't necessarily reflect that you think or believe the same. Right. And so it's all about perspective, right? You may think that you're coming in super friendly and just trying to lighten the mood, but the user may take that as you're my issue seriously. Right. And so always walk in a neutral tone, ready to gauge how the user is feeling and, be ready to be dynamic, socially dynamic on the fly. Yeah. Right.
I would so argue those are in this situation, the temperament. So the tone
absolutely
needs
fair.
The tone needs to be, hey, I understand you're having a problem. I've read through the ticket notes. I want to confirm a couple things for my own troubleshooting to make sure I have these issues correct, and if there's anything else I can garner from these. So there's a way to get more information off of the troubleshooting without sounding like you haven't reviewed the ticket. So
absolutely.
There's a way to engage with the client like, hey, I want to make sure I'm understanding these because it'll help this process move along faster. So I'm going to go over the details, make sure these are correct, and then I'll proceed from there. And what you're doing is there's a tone of voice and directness that you can apply when you're speaking with an end user that is on edge that will actually de-escalate them. Yep. Because you're showing Absolutely. The appropriate amount of concern. You don't sound panicked, but be direct, be firm. And I'm using that voice now as an illustration. Like, hey, I understand you're having a problem. So let me get this straight. You've tried to do your password multiple different times. It looks like you've had to reset it multiple times. So why don't we do this? I'm going to go ahead and reset it again. We're going to make sure that everything works for you. And then after that, why don't we get a password manager or somewhere that we can securely store your password in a convenient way for you so that this doesn't have to happen again. And I'm sorry that you're going through this. I know this is incredibly frustrating, but hopefully we can get this resolved and this won't be an issue any longer. That right there, almost
I'm
immediately.
less bad now.
Yeah, that almost immediately
Seriously.
de-escalates them.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean, Sean's nailing it. He's showing you guys exactly what works. I've done it a million times in my years, and it's absolutely just taking the problem seriously, showing them that you're taking it seriously, and it just 99% of your problems will dissipate at that point.
And then once you've solved the problem, is there anything else I can do for you? Is there anything that I can help make this process better, or is there any other little inconveniences that I can help you with? Because that extra little step of engagement and concern will then just they're like butter. It's great. So I wanted to illustrate that point because it's that white glove approach that is so hard to teach.
Yep. That's why you want to hire people.
I appreciate it, Sean. No, those are really, really good questions, really good points. Matt, you as well. Brent, do you have anything to add in or throw?
No, I mean, I think honestly, you guys knocked that out of the park. I don't think I have anything else to add. I've always been real big.
Thanks, Dad.
I mean, it makes me proud because I've helped, outside of Matt anyways, I've helped train in some shape or form Sean. I've helped train some shape or form Jordan, and
not some shape and form. I'll come in here and just throw it out here. Brent was the blueprint. You know what I'm saying? I told Brent at one point that he was like Emperor Palpatine and I was Darth Vader. You know what I mean? We was ruling with the rule of iron fists, knocking issues out left and right. Couldn't be stopped. Don't dismiss it, Brent. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that. I mean, like I said, it does do me proud. I don't know. I've always been big on just really relating with the end user, and really kind of.
That's a good word.
But I'm always like that anyways though. Like I get on the phone and I'm instantly like I'm having a conversation with the person. Like it takes a lot. Like they have to really, 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 really be trying to not be friendly with me for me to not have a conversation with them. They have to be doing their damnness to be going against like having a conversation with somebody. You know what I mean? Like, because that's just not who I am. I'm on the phone, I'm making conversation. How you doing? What'd you do this weekend? How's your day going? I'm directing them away from the problem. And in the background, I'm remoted into their computer and I'm fixing their problem. And they don't even, they're not even paying attention to the fact that I'm just about done fixing their issue, and I'm kind of I'm redirecting the whole thing and kind of, it's like misdirection almost. I'm showing them one thing over here to the right while I'm doing this thing to the left. And I don't know, I think it goes a long ways because it just makes the whole, in addition to just kind of like easing them through the process, when it's all said and done, they're just like, man, that was a pleasant experience. You know what I mean? And obviously I'm speaking kind of more, I'm speaking before things hit the fan. But I mean, it applies both ways. If you have more individuals, if your service team is approaching it from that point of view more often, I think you're going to have less CSATs and you're not going to have to worry about having that conversation with those pissed off end users as much,
right?
Because they're going to be a lot more understanding. You're going to have a lot more end users that are going to be like, well, I'm still having problems, but that guy, he was just such a nice guy. I don't think, he's super knowledgeable and whatnot. I think I just, we're just having issues with my computer again. It's not a big deal. I just need more help. It's not going to be one of those situations of, yeah, he's a dumbass. You know what I mean? And like, I need more help because he didn't know what he was doing. They're not going to say that anymore. They had such a great experience with that engineer as a person that they would never say that anymore because, you know, they talked to them as a person. They related. It wasn't a business transaction anymore. It was a human transaction. It was one person talking to another person, and it was just a social experience. And I think that goes a long ways, and that's something that connection is missing these days more often than not. You know, I think we're becoming robots almost, and we're reading scripts, and we're becoming, in some cases, too process heavy, and we need to stop. I'm all about process. Don't get me wrong. As long as we're still kind of working down that checklist, we need to do so like in our own way. We need to put our own flair on it. We need to still be personable and relate to folks and be friendly. And yeah, that's my input to that situation. That's where I've always tried to go with it. And I, you know, don't get me wrong. And I dealing with people ultimately for me at the end of the day is a bit exhausting.
Heard that.
But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 100%, 110%, 120%. Like I'm not going to do it in a half-assed way. I want to put my all into it like I do most other things. So that's where I stand on that sort of thing. I encourage everybody to kind of like, you know, if you're going to be, you know, the IT, a huge percentage of it. We've had this conversation before when it comes to when we've talked about getting into the IT field and stuff like that. It's very heavy customer service, and almost every role to some extent, it's very heavy customer service. If that is not for you, you might not want to do it. Like you gotta be about talking to people. You gotta be about relating to people. If you can't relate to people right now, if you can't have a conversation with the person next to you, if you have to be argumentative about everything, you're not going to have a good time. You're just not.
Hard days for you, dog.
Yep. Very hard days.
Brent, I think you made another excellent implicit point. You're knocking it out of the park today, but the window of opportunity to build rapport with that person is very short. And almost immediately from when you pick up that call, you are making a first impression and building a short-term relationship with that person. Because everything is relational to some degree. So be mindful of, you have a very short window of time from when the conversation begins to make that impression. So just be cognizant of that.
Yep. I like to kill them with kindness, man, every time.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
Yep. Cool, guys. Well, we've been chatting for just over an hour. I think that's a pretty good one to wrap it up on. Once again, we would just love to, if you've made it here, we would love to talk to you. Come to our Discord. Tell us if our stories were good. Tell us if they sucked. If you got silly stories about, you know, people just ripping cables out of walls, I got more stories, man. I got stories about people cutting.
I love talking stories. Dude, I love it.
Bro, I got stories about people cutting Ethernet cables with like knives, and then like I'm talking bundles the size of your fist. I got stories. Come to the Discord. We got more stories out there. We'd love to hear your stories also. We'd love to hear if you're enjoying Baldur's Gate 3. I know I am. And last but not least, yeah, I know. And last but not least, I'm just going to go ahead and plug that Pete and Pants store one more time, because some of that stuff is straight fire. Thank you for listening, folks, and have, a good day, evening, or whatever night. I don't know when you're listening to us. All right, later.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.